I'm Elise, 32, a systems engineer who poured my heart into building a $3.4 billion government system. My name was the only one on that contract, a badge of pride in a world that rarely lifts women like me. I trusted my team like family, shared late nights coding, dreaming big. But they turned on me, erased my work, and thought they could bury me. Their smug faces didn't see what was coming. Have you ever been betrayed by those you trusted? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive into this story together. The office in Virginia hummed with a restless energy, monitors glowing under fluorescent lights, coffee cups scattered like artifacts of our endless grind. I was the lead engineer on Project Sentinel, a system that processed satellite data for national security worth $3.4 billion. My code was the backbone, every line a piece of me. I'd spent years perfecting it, often staying late, my desk a chaos of sticky notes and empty soda cans. My team felt like home. Marcus, the senior engineer, with a quick laugh, always had my back, or so I thought. Harper, the sharp junior coder, brought energy with her witty banter. Sheila, our HR manager, checked in with warm smiles, asking about my weekend plans. We'd bonded over pizza during crunch times, laughing about bugs in the code like they were inside jokes. That morning we had a big meeting with government officials. I'd prepped for weeks, my stomach knotted with nerves but buzzing with pride. My algorithm, the heart of Sentinel, was about to be showcased. I wore my best blazer, the navy one my sister Bethany said made me look like I could run the world. I stood at the front projector, ready my slides detailing every function I'd built. Marcus leaned over, whispering, "You've got this, Elise." His confidence steadied me. The room filled with suits, their faces stern, clipboards in hand. I started my presentation explaining how my algorithm processed terabytes of data in seconds. Halfway through, Marcus stood up, interrupting. "Let me clarify," he said, his voice smooth. He launched into a detailed explanation of my work, using phrases I'd shared with him over coffee last week. "This algorithm optimizes efficiency," he said. Smiling at the officials, my chest tightened. Those were my words, my ideas. The officials nodded, scribbling notes, and one clapped Marcus on the shoulder as we wrapped up. I stood there frozen, my slides forgotten. Back at my desk, I replayed it. Maybe he just got carried away. Marcus had always been the loud one, the guy who charmed everyone. I trusted him. He'd mentored me when I started, taught me how to navigate the firm's politics. I shook it off, telling myself it was a one-time thing. But a small voice nagged at me, the same one that used to whisper when I was a kid trying to keep peace between my parents' shouting matches. "Don't rock the boat, Elise. Just let it go." My phone buzzed. A text from Bethany. "Mom's not doing great. Can you call?" My heart sank. Mom had been in and out of doctor's appointments, her health a quiet worry we rarely spoke about. I typed a quick reply, promising to call later, but my mind was split. Work was my anchor, the place where I could control things. I couldn't afford to lose focus now. That afternoon, Harper stopped by my desk, her ponytail swinging. "Great demo," she said, her smile a little too bright. "Marcus really sold it." There was a glint in her eyes, something I couldn't place. Was she mocking me? I brushed it aside, blaming my nerves. But as I packed up for the day, I noticed Marcus and Harper lingering by the coffee machine, their heads closed, their laughter sharp. My stomach churned. Something felt off, but I couldn't name it. I headed home, the weight of the day clinging to me like damp clothes. That night I couldn't sleep. The hum of my apartment's radiator felt too loud, mirroring the static in my head. I kept replaying Marcus's interruption, his voice claiming my work like it was his own. By morning, I convinced myself to let it slide. He was just excited, I thought, sipping coffee at my kitchen counter. I'd talk to him, clear the air. We were a team after all. I pulled on my favorite sweater, the soft gray one Mom gave me years ago, and headed to the office, determined to focus. The firm was a maze of cubicles, the air thick with the scent of printer ink and ambition. I found Marcus by the water cooler, his tie loosened, joking with a junior analyst. I approached, my heart thudding. "Hey, about yesterday?" I started, keeping my tone light. "I noticed you presented my algorithm. Maybe next time we could share the spotlight. My smile felt forced, but I wanted to keep things civil. Marcus's expression shifted his eyes, narrowing just enough to notice. "Elise, it's a team effort," he said, his voice smooth but edged. "I was just making sure the suits got the big picture." He clapped my shoulder, a gesture that felt more dismissive than friendly. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, and walked back to my desk. His words echoed my childhood when Dad would say, "Pick your battles, kid." But this didn't feel like a battle I could ignore. At lunch, I sat alone in the break room picking at a sandwich. Harper slid into the chair across from me, her tray clattering. "Rough day?" She asked, her voice too casual. I shrugged, not wanting to spill my doubts. "You're quiet lately." She pressed her eyes, searching mine. "Everything okay with you and Marcus?" There was a sharpness to her tone, like she was probing for weakness. I mumbled something about deadlines and excused myself, my appetite gone. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop and started reviewing the project logs. I'd spent months fine-tuning Sentinel's data processing, often staying late, while others left for happy hour. My code was clean, efficient, my pride etched into every function. But as I scrolled, I noticed something odd. A section of my latest update had been reassigned to Harper in the system logs. My stomach dropped. I hadn't authorized that. I cross-checked the timestamps the change was made yesterday, right after the demo. I leaned back, my chair creaking. Was this a mistake? A glitch? I wanted to believe it was, but the unease from yesterday grew sharper, like a splinter working its way deeper. I thought of confronting Harper, but her smirk from the meeting flashed in my mind. Instead, I opened a new document and started logging every contribution I'd made to Sentinel, every late night, every breakthrough. If something was shifting, I needed proof of my work. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Bethany Mom's Labs came back. "Not good. Can you come this weekend?" Guilt hit me like a wave. I'd been so caught up in work I hadn't called her back. I typed a quick reply promising to visit soon, but my hands shook as I hit send. Mom's health was slipping, and here I was, fighting invisible battles at work. I felt stretched thin, like a wire about to snap. That afternoon, Sheila stopped by my desk, her smile too bright. "Elise, just checking in," she said, leaning against my cubicle. "You seem stressed. Everything okay with the team?" Her concern felt rehearsed, like she was fishing for something. I forced a smile, saying I was just focused on the deadline. She nodded, but her eyes lingered, assessing. As she walked away, I caught a glance between her and Marcus across the room. It was quick, but it felt deliberate, like a signal I wasn't meant to see. By the end of the day, my head ached. I packed my bag, my fingers brushing the photo of Dad on my desk, his grin wide from the day I won a coding contest in high school. "Your work speaks for itself," he'd said. But now it felt like my work was being stolen piece by piece. As I left the office, Harper's laugh echoed down the hall, sharp and careless. I gripped my bag tighter, a quiet resolve forming. Something was wrong, and it wasn't just my imagination. The next morning, I walked into the office with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. My eyes were gritty from sleepless nights. My contribution log was now a lifeline, pages of timestamps and code commits I'd typed out in a frenzy, proof I wasn't invisible. But the air in the firm felt different, like everyone knew something I didn't. Colleagues who used to chat with me about weekend plans now gave tight smiles, their conversations stopping when I passed by. I felt like a ghost in my own workplace. At my desk, I opened Sentinel's dashboard to test a new patch I'd written. The screen froze, then flashed an error. My heart sank. A bug in my code? Impossible. I'd triple-checked it. I dug into the logs, my fingers flying over the keyboard. There it was, a sloppy line of code inserted last night under Harper's credentials. It was her work, rushed and messy, breaking my system. I fixed it in 20 minutes, sweat beading on my forehead, but the damage was done. In the next team meeting, Marcus stood at the whiteboard, his marker squeaking as he outlined the next phase. He pointed to the bug. "This could have been a disaster," he said, his eyes locking on mine. "Elise, we need to be more careful." My jaw clenched. I opened my mouth to explain, but Harper cut in, her voice bright. "I caught it early, Marcus. already working on a fix. My fix. My blood boiled, but the room was already moving on, nodding at her like she was the hero. After the meeting, I stayed behind my hands, gripping my notebook. I approached Marcus, my voice low. That bug wasn't mine. You know that. He sighed like I was a kid throwing a tantrum. Elise, we're under pressure. Let's not point fingers. His dismissal hit like a slap. I walked away, my chest tight, feeling the walls closing in. Harper lingered nearby, pretending to check her phone, but I caught her glance, smug and fleeting. That evening, I found a sticky note on my monitor. Stay focused, team player. No signature, but Sheila's handwriting was unmistakable. My stomach churned. Her performance review loomed tomorrow, and the phrase areas for improvement echoed in my head. I wanted to rip the note to shreds, but instead I tucked it into my bag, evidence of something I couldn't yet name. My phone buzzed as I left the office. Bethany's name lit up the screen, but I couldn't answer. Her last text about Mom's surgery burned in my mind. I'd promised to be there, but the firm's deadline was tomorrow, and I was drowning. I climbed into my car, the engine's hum doing nothing to quiet my thoughts. At a stoplight, I glanced at the passenger seat where Dad's old coding manual sat dog-eared from years of use. He'd believed in me, but now I wondered if I'd been naive to think my work could protect me. Back home, I opened my laptop, checking the project logs again. Another section of my code had been reassigned to Harper, this time a core function I'd spent months perfecting. My hands shook as I added it to my log, each entry feeling like a desperate plea to be seen. I thought of Mom alone in her hospital room and Bethany carrying the weight of it all. I was failing them, failing myself. The office's whispers. Marcus's lies. Harper's smirk. Sheila's note. They were suffocating me. Tomorrow's review loomed like a storm, and I knew deep down it wasn't about improvement. It was about erasing me. Friday morning hit like a freight train. I barely slept, my eyes burning as I walked into the office, clutching my coffee like a lifeline. Sheila's performance review was in an hour, and my gut told me it was a trap. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, my contribution log, open pages of evidence that felt useless now. The office was quieter than usual, the usual buzz replaced by a heavy stillness, like everyone was holding their breath. Sheila's email from last night sat in my inbox unopened. I clicked it, my heart pounding. Prepare to discuss your role on Sentinel, it read, cold and vague. I scanned my desk, noticing my nameplate was gone, replaced by a blank one. My breath caught. It was a small thing, but it felt like they'd already erased me. I opened Sentinel's interface, checking the system one last time. My access was still active, my name still tied to the contract. That was my leverage, the one thing they couldn't take. The meeting room was stark, all glass and steel, with a long table that made me feel small. Sheila sat at the head, her smile tight, flanked by Marcus and Nathan, the CEO, whose presence sent a chill down my spine. Nathan, in his crisp suit, barely looked at me, his eyes on his phone. Marcus leaned back, arms crossed, his usual charm replaced by a hard edge. Sheila slid a folder across the table. Elise, we need to talk about your performance, she said, her voice clipped. I opened the folder, my hands steady despite the tremor in my chest. It was a termination letter effective immediately. Performance issues, it said, listing vague complaints, lack of teamwork, inconsistent output. My vision blurred. Inconsistent. I'd built, Sentinel debugged it, carried it. I looked up, my voice low. This is a mistake. I've given everything to this project. Nathan finally met my eyes, his expression cold. We've decided to move forward with Harper. She's shown real initiative. Harper. My stomach twisted. I glanced at Marcus, expecting him to speak up to admit my role. He looked away, his jaw tight. Sheila leaned forward, her tone almost pitying. Elise, it's not personal. We need someone who can lead under pressure. Not personal. It was my system, my code, my life. I felt the room tilt, my pulse roaring in my ears. I wanted to scream, to throw the folder at them, but my body wouldn't move. Then Nathan spoke, his voice flat. The system's unstable, Elise. We can't risk it. Unstable. My system was flawless, audited by the government itself. I opened my mouth to argue, but Marcus cut in. We've already transitioned key functions to Harper. She's ready. His words were a knife sharp and deliberate. I saw it then, clear as day, they'd planned this, all of them. My hands clenched the folder, the paper crumpling under my fingers. I stood my chair, scraping the floor. You're wrong, I said, my voice shaking but firm. You can't run Sentinel without me. Nathan raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Sheila's smile faltered just for a second. I walked out, my legs unsteady, their eyes burning into my back. In the hallway, my phone buzzed. Bethany, Mom's surgery didn't go well. Call me. My knees buckled. I leaned against the wall, the world collapsing. Mom. The project, my team. Everything was slipping through my fingers, and I was powerless to stop it. I stumbled out of the meeting room, my breath shallow, the termination letter crumpled in my fist. The hallway stretched endlessly, fluorescent lights buzzing like a swarm in my head. I passed colleagues, their glances sharp, some turning away, others whispering. My desk was just ahead, but it felt miles away. Then I saw it, my belongings, my books, my coffee mug stuffed into a cardboard box labeled miscellaneous. My heart stopped. They hadn't even waited for me to leave. Harper stood by the box, sorting through my things like they were trash. She looked up, her lips curling into a smirk. You should have played the game, Elise, she said. Her voice low, almost a hiss. I froze, her words slicing through me. Played the game. I'd poured my soul into Sentinel, worked nights while she flirted her way into meetings. My hands trembled, rage and hurt colliding. I wanted to shout, to demand why, but my throat closed up. Behind her, Marcus appeared, his face unreadable. He picked up my old coding manual, Dad's book, flipping through it carelessly. You left a mess, Elise, he said, tossing it into the box. A mess I'd built, their success line by line. My vision blurred, tears I refused to let fall, stinging my eyes. The office felt like a stage, every eye on me, judging, waiting for me to break. I grabbed the box, my nails digging into the cardboard. As I turned, Sheila called out, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Elise, don't forget to sign out your access codes. Access codes. My stomach lurched. They didn't know. My name was the only one on the contract, the sole key to Sentinel's core. They thought they could erase me, but without my codes, the system was a brick. I kept walking, my legs heavy, the box cutting into my arms. My phone buzzed again, Bethany's name flashing. I couldn't answer, not now. Mom's surgery, Harper's smirk, Marcus's betrayal, Sheila's fake concern. It was too much. I reached the elevator, the doors closing me in alone. My reflection stared back, pale eyes hollow. I'd given everything to this place, to them, and they'd thrown me out like nothing. My chest ached, a raw, gaping wound, and I didn't know how to stop the bleeding. I sat in my car in the office parking lot, the cardboard box of my belongings heavy on the passenger seat. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, the weight of Harper's smirk and Marcus's betrayal pressing against my chest. The world felt too small, too loud, but Dad's coding manual peeked out of the box, its worn cover grounding me. His voice echoed, "Stand up when it counts." I wasn't done yet. They'd forgotten one thing, Sentinel was mine. I drove home, the city lights blurring past. My apartment was quiet, the radiators hum, a faint comfort. I set the box on my kitchen table, pulling out Dad's manual. Flipping through it, I found a note in his handwriting. Elise built something unbreakable. My throat tightened. I'd built Sentinel, and they thought they could take it. But my access codes tied to my name alone were the key. They couldn't run it without me. I opened my laptop, my fingers trembling but steadying as I logged into Sentinel's remote server. My heart raced, but I felt a spark of control for the first time in weeks. I navigated to the admin panel, my domain, where I could lock the system's core functions. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. I typed a command disabling the data processing module. The screen flashed, access restricted. I exhaled my breath, shaky. The firm would notice soon, and they'd panic. My phone lit up with Bethany's name again. I answered this time, my voice hoarse. "Elise, where are you?" she asked, her tone sharp with worry. I told her about the firing, the words spilling out raw and jagged. She went quiet, then said, "Come to the hospital. Mom's awake, but it's not good." My chest ached, guilt mixing with my resolve. I promised to be there by morning, needing to see them to anchor myself. I called Andrea, a lawyer friend from college who'd always been a rock. Her voice was calm, professional, as I explained the contract, my name as sole architect, the codes. "Elise, you've got leverage," she said, her words sharp with certainty. "That contract ties Sentinel to you legally. They can't touch it without your approval." My pulse quickened. She agreed to meet me tomorrow to draft a plan. I hung up, feeling a flicker of power like a match catching flame. Back at my laptop, I drafted an email to Nathan, the CEO. My fingers moved deliberately, each word measured. "Sentinel is inoperative due to restricted access," I wrote. "As the contract's sole architect, I control the system. Contact me to discuss terms." I hit send, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about me. It was about every hour I'd poured in, every sacrifice. Dad's words rang louder now. "Stand up." I was done being erased. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The firm's smug faces. Harper's smirk, Marcus's dismissal, Sheila's fake concern flashed in my mind. They thought I'd walk away quietly. They were wrong. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from Marcus, his voice tight. "Elise, what did you do? Call me back." I didn't. The spark inside me grew, a quiet strength building. I wasn't just fighting for my job. I was fighting for myself, for Dad's legacy, for everything I'd built. The next morning I drove to the hospital, the city waking up around me, all soft grays and early light. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my mind churned, replaying the email I'd sent to Nathan. Locking Sentinel felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, but the weight of Mom's surgery and Bethany's worried voice pulled me back to earth. I parked, grabbing a small notebook from my bag. My new habit, jotting down every move, every thought to keep myself grounded. Inside the hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet hope. Bethany met me in the waiting room, her eyes red but fierce. "She's stable, but it's touch and go," she said, hugging me tight. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. We sat by Mom's bed, her face pale under the fluorescent lights, tubes snaking from her arms. I held her hand, her skin cool but familiar, and whispered, "I'm here." Bethany squeezed my shoulder, her own strength a mirror I hadn't seen before. She told me about her own fight, a coworker who'd undermined her at her marketing job, stealing her campaign ideas. "I stayed quiet too long," she said, her voice low. "Don't do that, Elise." Her words hit deep, echoing Dad's advice. I thought of Sentinel, my life's work, and the people who'd tried to erase it. I wasn't staying quiet anymore. Back home, I met Andrea at my kitchen table, papers spread out like a battle map. She dug into the contract, her glasses slipping down her nose as she pointed out clauses. "Your name's on every critical document," she said. "They can't transfer ownership without your consent. And that outage, it's costing them millions a day." My heart raced, not with fear, but with clarity. I'd locked the system, but now I needed a strategy. Andrea suggested a formal demand letter outlining my terms, reinstatement, full credit, and an apology. I typed the letter, my fingers steady, each word a brick in the wall I was rebuilding. As the sole architect of Sentinel, I wrote, "I retain exclusive control over its operation. I'm prepared to restore access upon meeting my conditions." It was calm, professional, but inside I felt a fire growing. This wasn't just about the job. It was about proving I wasn't invisible, that my work mattered. My phone buzzed relentlessly, Marcus again, then Sheila, their voicemails increasingly frantic. "Elise, this is serious," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "The government's breathing down our necks." I didn't respond. Instead, I checked the system logs remotely. The outage had halted data processing, entirely satellites blind without my code. A small, fierce part of me relished their panic, but guilt gnawed too. Sentinel wasn't just a job, it was national security. Could I live with the consequences? I drove to a nearby park, needing air. The trees were bare, winter's edge sharp in the breeze. I sat on a bench clutching Dad's manual, its pages worn from years of my hands. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, "I am enough." It felt childish, but it was true. I'd spent years proving myself shrinking to fit their expectations. No more. I tucked the manual into my coat, my breath visible in the cold air. As I stood, my phone lit up with an email from Nathan. "We need to talk. Name your terms." I didn't smile, didn't flinch. I just walked back to my car, my steps deliberate, the weight of my choice settling into something solid, unshakable. The morning after I sent the demand letter, my apartment felt too still, the silence broken only by the drip of my coffee maker. Nathan's email. "We need to talk" sat unanswered in my inbox. I didn't rush to reply. For the first time in weeks, I held the cards, and I wasn't going to fold. I sipped my coffee, the mug warm against my palms, and opened my laptop to check Sentinel's logs. The system was still locked, its data streams frozen, a 3.4 billion machine rendered useless by my command. My phone buzzed with a new voicemail from Marcus. His voice clipped, almost desperate. "Elise, this is chaos. The government's threatening to pull the contract. Call me." I set the phone down, my pulse steady but my mind racing. Chaos was what they'd earned, but the weight of it pressed on me. I'd built Sentinel to protect, not to paralyze. Doubt crept in, a quiet whisper asking if I'd gone too far. Andrea called, her voice brisk. "They're scrambling," she said. "The outage hit the news. Government auditors are circling. You've got their attention." She told me to meet her at a diner downtown to prep for negotiations. I nodded, though she couldn't see, and grabbed my coat, the same one I'd worn to the park yesterday, Dad's manual still tucked in its pocket. As I drove, the city felt sharper, like every streetlight was watching me. At the diner, Andrea spread out legal documents, her pen tapping the table. "They're in a corner," she said, showing me a clause that made the firm liable for delays. "Your lockout exposed their mismanagement. Marcus is taking heat." I leaned back, the vinyl booth squeaking, processing her words. "Marcus demoted." It should have felt good, but it didn't. I pictured his face, not smug now, but cornered, and it left a hollow ache. Back home, I visited Bethany and Mom at the hospital. Mom was awake, her eyes tired but warm. "You look different," she said, her voice weak. I smiled, brushing it off, but Bethany caught my eye, her expression searching. I told them about the lockout, keeping my voice low, like confessing a secret. Bethany's jaw tightened. "They deserve it," she said, but her hand on mine was gentle, grounding me. Mom just nodded, her silence heavy with understanding. Later, I checked my email. Nathan had replied, proposing a meeting tomorrow. "We're prepared to discuss your terms." He wrote, his tone formal but strained. I stared at the screen, my coffee cold now. The firm was bending, but I wasn't naive. They'd try to outmaneuver me. I opened my notebook, jotting down questions for Andrea, reinstatement terms, credit for my work protections against retaliation. Each word felt like carving my place back into existence. My phone lit up again, this time a text from Lucas, heard about the outage. "You're a legend." I smiled, faintly surprised. Lucas had always been quiet, a background figure in meetings, but now I wondered what else he knew. I typed a quick thanks, my fingers pausing. The office was unraveling, Marcus's lies exposed. Harper's role diminished. Yet as I sat there, the victory felt fragile, like glass I could still shatter. I closed my laptop, the room dim, my resolve solid, but my heart unsteady, waiting for what came next. The diner's fluorescent glow lingered in my mind as I drove to the meeting with Nathan, the city's morning haze blurring the skyline. Andrea sat beside me, her briefcase on her lap, her calm presence a tether. My stomach churned, not with fear, but with a quiet resolve that felt new, unfamiliar. I wore a simple black blazer, no frills. Just me. The firm's building loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting a woman I barely recognized, taller somehow in the morning light. Inside the conference room was colder than I remembered, the air sharp with tension. Nathan sat at the head, his tie slightly askew, a crack in his usual polish. Sheila was there, her hands folded tightly, her smile gone. Marcus wasn't. I'd heard he'd been sidelined, his office empty, his name scrubbed from the project roster. Harper, too, was absent, her role reduced to a footnote. I sat across from Nathan, Andrea beside me, my notebook open to my terms. Nathan spoke first, his voice measured but strained. "Elise, the outage has cost us. The government's furious. Let's find a solution." His eyes flicked to Andrea, then back to me, searching for weakness. I didn't flinch. "My terms are clear," I said, sliding the demand letter across the table. "Reinstatement as lead engineer, full credit for Sentinel, and a written apology." My voice was steady, each word a stone laid carefully. Andrea nodded, her pen poised, ready to counter any pushback. Nathan leaned back, his fingers drumming the table. "We can discuss reinstatement," he said, "but credit is shared. You know that." "Shared?" My jaw tightened. I'd built every line of that system alone in the dark hours while they slept. Andrea cut in, her tone sharp. "The contract names Elise as sole architect. Credit isn't negotiable." Nathan's eyes narrowed, but he didn't argue. The room felt smaller, the silence heavy with their defeat. Sheila shifted, her voice soft but edged. "Elise, we value you. Let's move forward together." Together. Her words felt like a script rehearsed and hollow. I thought of her sticky note, her team player jab, and my chest tightened. I didn't respond, letting the silence speak. Nathan cleared his throat, promising a response by tomorrow. As we stood, his handshake was brief, his palm clammy. Andrea whispered, "You've got them." But I felt no triumph, only a quiet ache. Outside, I checked my phone. A new text from Lucas Boards, digging into Marcus's expense reports. "You stirred a hornet's nest." I exhaled, picturing Marcus's empty office, his charm unraveling. Back home, I sat at my table, my notebook open. I wrote, "They see me now." But the words felt fragile. I'd turned the tables, but the cost was real. Nights lost, trust broken. I thought of Mom, her frail hand in mine, and Bethany's fierce support. My phone stayed silent. No calls from the firm, no apologies. I closed my notebook. The room dim, my heart heavy with the weight of what I'd done, what it meant, and what was still to come. The morning after the meeting with Nathan, I woke to sunlight filtering through my curtains, soft and golden, a rare quiet in my apartment. The firm had gone silent. No calls, no emails, just the weight of their impending decision hanging over me. I made tea, the steam curling upward, and sat at my window watching the street below come alive. Kids biked past, their laughter sharp and free. For the first time in weeks, I felt still, like I could breathe without bracing for a blow. I was reinstated yesterday, my title as lead engineer, restored Sentinel's credit etched back to my name. The office felt different when I walked in, not warmer but cautious, like colleagues were recalculating who I was. I kept my head high, my steps deliberate, but inside I was untangling what it meant to win this way. I'd fought not with screams but with strategy, and it had worked. Yet the victory sat unevenly, like a book balanced on its edge. I drove to the office, my car radio off, preferring the quiet. The firm's glass doors reflected a woman who looked like me but stood taller. Inside, I met Zoe, a new engineer, barely 23, her eyes wide with nervous excitement. I was assigned to mentor her, a role I hadn't expected. We sat at my desk now, cleared of boxes, and I showed her Sentinel's interface. Her questions were sharp, eager, reminding me of myself years ago, coding late with Dad's voice in my ear. "Teach someone what you know," he'd said. I smiled at Zoe, feeling a flicker of purpose. Later, I walked to the break room, passing empty cubicles where Marcus and Harper used to sit. Their absence was loud, a reminder of how fast things had shifted. Lucas caught up with me, his usual quiet demeanor softened. "You did what none of us could," he said, handing me a coffee. I nodded, unsure how to carry his praise. He told me about his own run-in with office politics, A promotion passed over for less. His honesty felt like a bridge, a new kind of trust. That evening, I visited Bethany and Mom again. The hospital room was brighter flowers on the table from a neighbor. Mom was sitting up, her smile faint but real. We talked about small things, her favorite soup, Bethany's new recipe. I didn't mention the firm, but Bethany's eyes held questions she didn't ask. As I left, she hugged me, whispering, "I'm proud of you." Her words settled into me, warm but heavy like a blanket I wasn't sure I deserved. Back home, I opened my notebook, its pages filled with my fight. I wrote a new line, "I'm still here." It wasn't about the firm or Sentinel. It was about me standing after the storm. I looked out my window again, the street now quiet, streetlights casting long shadows. My heart felt lighter, not healed, but steady like a boat finding calm water after a squall. I spent the weekend with Bethany and Mom, our first real family time in months. We sat in Mom's small living room, the couch sagging under us, a tray of cookies between us. The TV played an old sitcom, its laugh track soft in the background. Bethany teased me about my terrible baking skills, and Mom chuckled, her voice stronger than it had been. I looked at them, their faces lit by the dim lamp, and felt something settle inside me like a stone finding its place in a riverbed. Back at the office Monday, I walked past the conference room where I'd been fired. The glass walls held no trace of that day, but I carried it still. Zoe was waiting at my desk, her laptop open, a question about data encryption on her lips. I explained it slowly, watching her nod, her fingers quick on the keys. Teaching her felt like planting something new, something that could grow beyond me. I wasn't just rebuilding Sentinel, I was building a path for someone else. Lucas joined me for lunch, a rare break in the courtyard. The air was crisp, leaves crunching under our feet. He shared a story about his sister, a coder who'd quit after being overlooked. "You're different," he said, his voice quiet. "You stayed." I sipped my coffee, letting his words sink in. Staying wasn't about winning. It was about choosing myself over and over. I told him about the scholarship I'd started in Dad's name for women in tech. His eyes lit up and we brainstormed ideas, our voices blending with the rustle of leaves. That evening I sat alone in my apartment, the city humming outside. I pulled out a small wooden box from my shelf one Dad had carved when I was a kid. Inside was a single photo, me at 10, holding a science fair ribbon, Dad's arm around me. I traced his face, his grin wide and proud. I didn't need to prove myself to him anymore or to anyone. I'd fought not for their approval but for my own. I opened my notebook, its pages worn from weeks of writing. I added a line, "I choose me." It was simple, almost too small for the weight it carried. I thought of Marcus and Harper, their faces faded now like old photographs. I forgave them, not for them, but for me to let go of the anger that had tethered me too long. I closed the notebook, the room soft with evening light, my breath slow and even. The world felt wide again, and I was ready to step into it whole. The weeks after my reinstatement passed quietly like the slow turn of seasons. I led Sentinel to completion, its final audit. Flawless, my name etched in the records as its architect. The firm introduced new policies, transparency logs, credit protocols, small shifts, but enough to feel like progress. I walked through the office each morning, my steps steady, no longer bracing for whispers. Colleagues nodded now, some with respect, others with caution. I didn't need their warmth. I'd found my own. At home, I started a new ritual, early mornings on my balcony, a mug of tea in hand, watching the city wake. The skyline was jagged but constant, a reminder that some things endure. I'd taken to sketching in a small journal, not code, but moments, kids playing in the park, the curve of a bridge against the sky. It was a way to see the world again, to notice what I'd missed in the chaos. Zoe became a steady presence at work, her questions sharper each day. I taught her how to debug under pressure, how to stand firm when doubted. One afternoon she hesitated, then said, "You make this look possible." I smiled, my chest warm. I saw myself in her, not the me who'd been broken, but the one who'd rebuilt. Mentoring her felt like a thread connecting me to Dad, to the girl who coded with him late into the night. Bethany and I planned weekly dinners with Mom, our kitchen filled with the clatter of pots and soft laughter. Mom's health was fragile, but she was home, her hands steady as she chopped herbs. One evening she looked at me over the table, her eyes soft. "You're stronger than you know," she said. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Those dinners became my anchor, a space where I could just be, not prove. Lucas and I started a workplace ethics group meeting over coffee to draft ideas. It wasn't grand, just a few of us talking about fairness, about speaking up. He shared stories of others who'd been sidelined, their voices quiet but real. I listened, adding my own thoughts, feeling a purpose grow. The scholarship in Dad's name took root. 2 applications trickling in from young women with bright, determined eyes. I read each one, their dreams a mirror of my own once. I sat on my balcony one evening, the air cool, the city's hum distant. My journal lay open, a sketch of Mom's hands, mid-chop, her wedding ring catching the light. I'd carried so much anger, doubt, betrayal, but now I felt lighter, like I'd set down a weight I didn't need. The fight wasn't over, not entirely, but I was no longer afraid of the cracks. They were where the light got in. One quiet Sunday, I drove to a lake outside the city, a place I hadn't visited since I was a kid. The water was still reflecting a sky streaked with pink and gold. I sat on the shore, my shoes off toes, digging into the cool sand. My journal rested in my lap, but I didn't write. I just listened to the lap of waves, the distant call of a bird. This was new, sitting without a purpose, without a fight to plan. I'd spent so long proving myself to the firm, to the world, that I'd forgotten how to just be. I thought about the past months, not the betrayal, but what came after. Standing up hadn't just been about locking Sentinel or demanding my place. It was about seeing myself clearly, maybe for the first time. I'd always thought strength meant pushing through, silencing doubt, pleasing others. But real strength was quieter. It was choosing to walk away from anger, to forgive, without forgetting to build something new from the ashes of what broke me. I remembered a moment with Zoe last week. She'd fixed a bug on her own, her face lighting up as she showed me. I'd nodded, proud, and realized I wasn't just teaching her code. I was showing her how to stand firm, how to own her work. That felt bigger than any contract. At dinner with Mom and Bethany, I'd caught them exchanging a glance, a silent agreement that I was okay, really okay. Their trust in me mirrored the trust I was learning to give myself. The scholarship was growing, letters from applicants piling up, each one a story of grit and hope. I read them at night, their words a reminder that my fight wasn't just mine. It was for every woman who'd been doubted, every dream dismissed. Lucas and I met again, our ethics group, drafting a guide for new hires. It was small, practical, but it mattered. Change didn't need to be loud to be real. As the sun dipped lower, I picked up a smooth stone from the lake's edge, its weight solid in my palm. I didn't need to carry everyone's expectations anymore. I'd learned to carry myself, my flaws, my fire, my quiet moments. Betrayal had cracked me open, but what spilled out wasn't weakness. It was clarity. I was enough, not because of what I built, but because of who I chose to be. I stood, slipping the stone into my pocket, the lake calm behind me. Life wasn't perfect. Mom's health was still fragile, work still had its edges, but I was no longer afraid of the cracks. They were where the light got in. What's a moment that broke you open, that made you see yourself differently? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. If this resonated, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening, for being here. Here's to finding our light, one quiet step at a time.